The Scarlet Bandana version 4 Mark II is a parody of the old Red Scarf 2 version B, which is actually my first review on this channel. The product page is quite proud of the fact that it was born out of a meme, with the joke being people asking what the keyboard in the picture is for anything with this 65% with left function keys layout. This has been a long time coming, with my payment going through in late July of 2018, but finally here we are. The first thing that'll grab your attention is the layout. Though there have been more entries since the group I started, the whole left side macros thing remains rare. I really like the depth to width ratio on this. For a regular 65% layout, when you center the board between the G and H keys, the right side has 2.5 additional units of keycaps, which is unbalanced. Coincidentally, these left side macros are 2 units, and the separator should result in just about symmetrical in terms of distance from the middle of the typing layout. The board has a healthy amount of bezel, about matching the thickness of the separator, and the edges are pretty round. The corners are also quite a bit rounder than what we're used to seeing, making this board follow a theme of smoothness. Moving on to the side, you'll see that mine has a 0-degree angle. The base that supports a 3-degree angle was also offered, but at the time I was using a plank and thought flat was best. Between the top and bottom halves is this piece of brass. You had the option to select acrylic, aluminum, or brass for this, with the acrylic option acting as a diffuser for underglow. That look has since become kind of dated, so I'm glad I went with this one. One pretty disappointing thing here is that the 3 pieces don't really line up super well. This is the same problem I have with a ton of boards with side seams, and it just blows my mind how difficult this must be to resolve. As far as design goes, that's mostly it. The front and sides follow this 3-layer look, only to be interrupted by the rear USB port cutout, which is kind of a cavern, particularly in the middle layer. In 2020, I don't know if the design really holds up. On the one hand, the round cross-section isn't outlandishly outdated, but that middle diffuser/accent layer is kind of old school and honestly reminiscent of drop slide boards. Before we get into the internals, let's take a look at the finish quality. While most anodization finishes are done over a media blasted surface, this one looks like it was done on a brushed one. While it doesn't look bad, it is a bit associated with cheaper products pretending to be expensive, which is a bummer considering how pricey this was. The last time I've seen something like this on a keyboard is on my KBD 661. Before you disassemble, you'll have to actually take all your switches out due to the absolutely insane internal design of the Scarlet Bandana. Undo the 8 screws from the bottom, and the top layer along with the plate will come apart. What you find here is pretty stupid. The bottom half of the assembly consists of the following: the lowercase, the diffuser or accent, followed by the PCB screwed into 8 seemingly randomly distributed standoffs in the base. The plate connects to the top half at 10 mounting points with criminal positioning. There's one directly under the spacebar, which is usually avoided to mitigate harshness on the key you press with the most force, and there are 2 points for each side. Regular top mounting will involve some amount of screws, probably 8, but usually none of them have them in the side because that's a little too much connection to the case, but the Scarlet Bandana forges ahead nevertheless. So what this combination amounts to is basically a tray mount. In addition to maybe providing some flex or bounce or whatever, the major draw to top mounting is the consistency in sound and feel, but if you are forced to have the PCB make contact with these 8 hotspots, then the top mount is entirely pointless. I know there will be some people who say to simply not screw in the PCB, and it may be viable if there's extra space than usual between the plate and the PCB, but really that doesn't excuse the poor design. That's not to say there wasn't a reason for these bottom standoffs. The PCB is hot swap, and the intent was to make it possible to insert switches without taking the board apart. However, there are other options, notably the Rama approach of screwing in the PCB to the plate itself. In those other solutions, foregoing the screws will possibly make a big difference, but here it won't. Another pretty dumb thing is that if you choose to use the plate, which you might for sound purposes, you'll be forced to use plate mount stabilizers. The cutout for plate mount stabilizers are not compatible with PCB mount ones, so when combined with the fact that PCB does have PCB mount stabilizer holes, you really start to wonder if the designer knew what they were doing at all. Final note on the PCB is that it uses KL hot swap sockets and supports only a very few layout options, including split backspace and split spacebar. While we're on the inside, I should comment on the interior finish quality. This isn't something that really matters, but when you've paid this much money, it would be nice to see a premium product inside and out. That's not what we get. Instead, we have close to entirely unprocessed machining lines that's been anodized over. You don't see this on the cheapest of the Chinese aluminum cases. Pretty disappointing. Overall, the build quality of the Scarlet Bandana just doesn't match the price. The only thing it's good at is being heavy with all these unrefined metal parts, which was good noob bait at the time. Given the internals, the typing experience is pretty unsurprising. With my brass plate especially, the bottom out is rock solid and the sound is that typical dampened metal tone. When I ordered this, I was just getting into expensive customs. I had only recently received my E6 V2, which really blew me away, and going off that, this made a lot of sense. This is fairly common due to the group buy nature of the hobby, but while I waited, and I waited for a long time, I got to try a ton of better options and basically grew out of it before I even saw it. Pretty tough lesson to learn for $435, but it is what it is. So obviously this was kind of a joke, kind of not. Like I said, I joined the group by late July and never received my keyboard. There are a couple complaint posts on Woodkeys on Reddit that you can read up. I'm pretty confident in the content of the review, which was based on product pages and internal shots by people who had the prototypes. In the almost 2 years I've waited, I've used so many keyboards that I have a pretty good idea without needing to try. As for the vendor, the guy doesn't seem like a bad person, but maybe someone who bit off more than he can chew. During the late stages of communication, he says something like his real job getting in the way. I get that, but we all have things that come up and we don't really get to bail on our responsibilities, especially if there are possibly tens of thousands of dollars on the line. Let me remind you that I alone lost almost $500,000 in this. A lot of people suggested taking legal action, but it seems that cost and headaches will outweigh any potential outcome, so I leave you with a couple tips and tricks regarding group buys. Number 1. Always charge back. When it comes to group buys, the runners really have most of the leverage. Let me list some here. They have all of your money, they have the most control over production, and if production goes well, they have all of the products. They often say no refunds are available for group buys, so what risk are they taking anyway? And suppose you aren't satisfied with your item. They still hold all the cards even if they offer a full refund. They'll just turn right around and sell B stock for a markup. And this starts even prior to the group buys opening. See the disgusting hype building industry with hundreds of people lining up to kiss a designer's ass to maybe just slightly improve their odds of being bestowed the opportunity to purchase a metal rectangle. These are no longer the days of small private group buys whose goal was to get something made for a lower cost. This is an entire industry now, and no matter how much they hang out in your favorite Discord servers, the vendors are not your friends. Group buys are a relic from the past, and is an instrument to push risk away from the organizers onto the buyers, which worked well for its original purpose. But in the current age is entirely anti-consumer. Always hold runners accountable. And really, you only have one piece of leverage, which is your PayPal or credit card ability to charge back. Some of these protections have periods that expire before the group buy delivers, so you should always ask for a re-invoice. A runner that denies a re-invoice is suspect. Before someone brings up runners putting their reputation on the line, it seems that their shiniest new product will forgive all of their past sins. See the continued business for Sprit and Zeal's unaffected reputation after the Xeno. And I would bet that if Mech 27 or Teslatron came back with a cool new keyboard, people would line right up to shower them with words of forgiveness. Of course, there do still exist some small group buys for friends and family in which you can exercise personal judgment, but oftentimes these are still random people on the internet, so you should be on the side of caution. Number 2. Be wary of group buys that just barely succeed. This one doesn't apply to keycaps as much because manufacturing for those seems to be fairly robust, but a group buy success is often an indicator for the runner's commitment to the project. I say this because most boards are sold by marketing rather than by its merits alone. If the runner puts sufficient effort into the marketing, you could be reasonably sure of its success and therefore the runner's resolve. The other factor for this is that when there are greater volumes at play, the runner may feel more pressure. Number 3. Be wary of group buys that close and reopen. This kind of relates to the previous point, but buys that close and reopen are signs of being disorganized. I've had the same experience with the Unigo 66, the Skogalite, as well as the Scarlet Bandana. The last one was supposed to close at the end of July, reopened in August, and then there was a shady giveaway program for X additional units sold that never ended up happening. These are the signs of weak organization. Number 4. Pay attention to the frequency of updates. A lot of group buy runners have expressed annoyance at people asking for updates when there are none, but honestly, you have all their money and it is kind of your responsibility to provide regular updates. If the runner promises a scheduled update, pay attention to whether this is followed. Syrup Labs running the CRP group buy has been good about this, as well as Heinebusch with the HBCP. Zeal during the Xeno group buy was horrendous at it, and Woodkeys got out a grand total of 2 weekly updates in the span of 13 months after he promised them. These are general and anecdotal, so take that as you will, but maybe that'll be helpful to some. Anyway, to wrap this up, I don't expect to ever get my keyboard or money back, but on the off chance that you're watching this, please do the right thing.